Florida's housing market is about to blow up in 2022. The bubble has never been bigger. Prices are up, get this, nearly 30% year over year. Meanwhile, inventory is at record lows, meaning that you as a home buyer can't find anything on the market. This is a huge cause for concern because Florida's housing market in 2022 is beginning to look a lot like it did in 2006, right before the worst housing crash in U.S. history. Home values in Florida from 2007 to 2012 went down by 50%. Homeowners, real estate investors, they all got wiped out and there was a mass wave of foreclosures. Could Florida's housing market be entering a similar fate over the next couple years? I'm going to answer that question in this video so you as a Florida home buyer or real estate investor can feel more secure in your investment. Just to give you a little hint, I think there's certain cities across Florida that are in for another devastating crash over the next couple years, while there's one city in particular that I think will continue booming. This is data that you need to be tracking if you're a home buyer, real estate investor, or someone moving to Florida. So without further ado, let's get into it. And the first thing you need to know about Florida's housing market today in early 2022 is just how much prices have gone up over the last year. This map shows that Florida is up 28% year over year on home values. Back in January 2021, the typical home value in Florida was $272,000. Today it's $349,000. Very few states across America have matched that level of appreciation over the last year. In fact, you can see that there's only 6 states with 28% or higher appreciation. You have Florida and then a cluster of 5 states in the mountain region of the US. So the price growth we're seeing across Florida's housing market right now in almost all of the cities in Florida is historic in level. When home prices go up by nearly 30% year over year, that is a definite sign of a bubble. Normally, home prices are only supposed to go up by about 3%. And you can see the last time that Florida saw home price growth this high, around plus 28% year over year, was back in 05-06 at the peak of the last housing bubble. And then, what happened next? We can see that home values in Florida plummeted for the next 5 years. In fact, values went down by 50% across the state from 2007 to 2012. You're going to want to stay tuned to the end of this video where I'm going to tell you if Florida's housing market is going to see another 50% crash, and in particular, which cities are most in the crosshairs of this upcoming crash. But before getting into that, I'm sure many of you have a question. You're wondering, how did Florida's housing market boom so much over the last 12 to 18 months? What's been going on during the pandemic to cause another housing market frenzy in Florida entering 2022? And the first place we need to look to answer that question is inventory, the number of homes for sale on the Florida housing market. And we can see that after being stable for much of 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, right around 135,000 homes on the market at any given time, we've seen a complete collapse in inventory since then. Quite simply, through the beginning of 2022, there is almost nothing on the market in Florida right now. The 41,000 homes active today on the market are 72% below the pre-pandemic level. And as you can see on this graph, I identified when the pandemic began because that was the demarcation point for Florida's housing market to go into overdrive mode. And so why is inventory down? Well, one obvious answer is it's no secret that during the pandemic, a lot of people left lockdown states like New York, Massachusetts, and California and went to Florida. It's warm weather, it's open economy, and its previously affordable housing prices made it a very attractive destination for people to move to during the pandemic. And migration data from the U.S. Census Bureau validates this case. We can see that in 2021, Florida attracted over 220,000 people to the state in terms of net domestic migration. That was the highest of any state in America, meaning that tons and tons of people were flooding into Florida. And this 220,000, this is the third highest level of inbound migration Florida has experienced in the last 30 years. The last time it was this high was back in 04-05 when over 260,000 people net moved to the state. However, shortly thereafter, migration crashed into negative territory in the late 2000s. Could we be seeing another migration crash in the next couple years in Florida, and how will that impact the housing market? Now get ready, folks. In just 1 second, we're going to take this analysis to the next level. Instead of looking at Florida just on the statewide level in terms of its housing market, we're going to take a look at the top 15 cities for real estate in Florida. Miami, Orlando, Tampa, Naples, Cape Coral, Port St. Lucie, Jacksonville, Pensacola. And I'm going to tell you which of these cities is going to crash hardest over the next couple years, as well as the one city that I think is going to continue booming. But first, let's summarize what we've learned so far about Florida's housing market in early 2022. Number one, Florida is one of the biggest boom states in America, with prices up nearly 30% year over year. Why are prices up? Well, inventory on the market is at all-time lows, while migration into Florida is near all-time highs. However, two potential causes for concern are, number one, the last time price growth was this high in 2006, a 50% crash in Florida followed, and then number two, the last time migration was this high, migration also subsequently crashed. Could Florida be setting itself up for another massive housing crash over the next couple years? Now, to get a sense of which cities in Florida could be most at risk of another 2007-style crash, I want you all to take a look at this map, which has all of the different housing markets in Florida, and I want you to pay special attention to the color coding. The areas in red, metros like Naples, Cape Coral, Port St. Lucie, Ocala, and Crestview have greater risk of another 2007-style crash because they rely on a higher share of housing demand from outside the metro area. That's what these percentages mean. So for instance, in Cape Coral, according to Realtor.com, which is where this data comes from, only 22% of home buyer searches came from people already living in Cape Coral, Fort Myers. That means 78% came from people who aren't living in Cape Coral, who are going to have to move there to buy a home. We can see the southwest coast of Florida is heavy in relying on external migration to support its housing market. Meanwhile, Miami is the exact opposite. 59% of the homebuyer searches in Miami come from people who already live there, which means Miami relies less on external homebuyer migration to support its housing market. Now, to understand the risk factors of these different markets in Florida based on where the home buyer demand is coming from, I want to go back to the Florida net migration graph I showed you before. Yes, we are at near an all-time high of migration into Florida, but what's interesting, folks, is even more people were moving to Florida in 04, 05, and we then saw what happened after that. There was a big collapse in migration to Florida. Why was there a collapse? Well, things got too expensive in Florida during that last housing bubble. Fewer and fewer people saw the value in moving there. More people who were already in Florida left, and that caused the whole charade in the Florida housing market to collapse. I believe we're in a similar situation here in 2022. Yes, Florida does have a lot of positive growth, a lot of inward migration, but it would be very naive to expect that migration to continue in perpetuity. It will inevitably drop off from this level over the next couple years. I don't know if it's going to be in 2022, maybe it's in 2023, but eventually this migration is going to go back down. And when it does, these places in red, Naples, Cape Coral, Punta Gorda, Port St. Lucie, Northport, Lakeland, Deltona, Ocala, Panama City, Crestview, those markets are going to get smacked when Florida's migration levels decline. But there's another risk factor that you all need to consider as a home buyer or real estate investor in Florida, and that's home supply and home building. Yes, inventory looks very low right now, but home builders across Florida are doing their best to make sure it does not stay low. More than any other state in America, Florida has had the biggest boom in home building over the last 12 months. You can see just how ridiculous this building surge is on this chart, where we're looking at the 20 metro areas in America that have had the biggest year-over-year increase in single-family home permitting. And what do you know? More than half of them are in Florida, and in fact, the top 6 are all in Florida. Cape Coral, plus 61%. Deltona, plus 54%, Ocala, plus 49%, Northport, Palm Bay, Crestview are all in the top 6, Port St. Lucie and Naples are 8 and 9, Lakeland's number 12, and then Jacksonville and Tampa are 18 and 19. So home builders are going nuts in Florida, and just to let you all know, when they pull a permit, and then it takes another, let's just say 6 to 12 months, maybe up to 15 months in the current environment for that home to get built. So these permits that were pulled in 2021 in markets like Cape Coral and Port St. Lucie, they're going to start hitting the market in 2022. At first, that's going to be great for you as a home buyer. It's going to be more inventory, but this could also be something that eventually crashes these cities. Because when you end up comparing the single-family permit growth on the x-axis here to the percentage of searches that come from inside the metro area on the y-axis, you see very clearly that all of these metros in orange are at huge risk. They're building lots and lots of new homes year over year while relying on a heavy share of external demand to support the market. Once again, Cape Coral, Deltona, Palm Bay, Northport, Ocala, Port St. Lucie, Naples, their presence in the lower left quadrant of this graph means that there's lots and lots of new homes being built and very few people who already live there looking to buy them. That is a formula that can work when migration is at its peak and when people are piling into Florida. But the second the migration faucet starts turning off and going down, those areas are going to get smacked across the face because it's going to happen just as home builders are delivering a record number of new homes. We're going to see likely a decline in the number of people moving there and demand. Meanwhile, the one city in Florida that's not really exposed to this is Miami. You can see that Miami has a very small percentage growth in single-family home building, while Miami, as I said before, actually relies mostly on people who already live there to support the housing market. So that makes much less downside risk for home buyers and real estate investors in Miami going forward. It also means that I believe Miami is the boom town that's going to keep on booming in Florida. While I think we're going to start to see major pain across much of the state starting in, let's say, late 2022, early 2023, I believe Miami is going to persist forward because its supply and demand fundamentals look much more stable. Now, a big question I'm sure many of you have at this point in the video is about timing. You want to know, when is this going to happen? When are we going to see the Florida housing crash, particularly in the southwest part of the state, places like Cape Coral and Naples and Punta Gorda? When are we going to see that start to happen? And I don't really know. I can't give you a definitive answer on that. Predicting timing in the housing market's tough. However, I'll say this. I think we're going to see probably another 6 to 9 months of solid appreciation in Florida, given just how low the inventory levels are today. It's going to take some time for those inventory levels to increase. And that means I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of 2022 or early 2023, we begin to see major softening in the Florida housing market, particularly in the cities in the bottom left quadrant of this graph. Moreover, it's just really important that as a home buyer, investor, or someone moving to Florida, that you just remember the character of Florida's housing market. It is a very volatile real estate market. Prices went down by 50% in the last crash. There's lots of home building. There's lots of in and out migration. There's lots of investors and home flippers and speculators. This is just the way Florida is, and you're going to see wild swings in home prices both up and down in Florida. Don't you forget that. I believe those swings down are going to be much worse in the southwest portion of the state, while a place like Miami, while it might decline somewhat, isn't going to decline by nearly as much. Now, I want to hear your feedback on Florida. If you're someone who's looking to buy a home there or already live there, what are your thoughts on the Florida housing market? Did the data in this video make sense to you? If so, comment below. Also, make sure to smash that like button and show your support for this channel. That's the best way, hitting the like button, that you can get me more followers, more viewers, and spread this out to more people. Additionally, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, make sure to do that. I come out with 3 of these data-driven housing market videos per week, and now that the housing market's turning, now that we're seeing crazy shifts in mortgage rates and inventory and home prices, you're going to want to track this data going forward, so make sure you're a subscriber. All right, everyone, until next time, this is Nick from Reventure Consulting signing off.